episode of the Hombre Cave. I'm your host, the Tequila Hombre. We're friends now. You can just call me Mark or Hombre or Dude or... I respond to just about everything. Except try to keep it nice, all right? Well, welcome to this episode. In this episode, we're going to expand on the whole wine thing that I started in the last episode because, I dove down this rabbit hole and started exploring things, and things just really started clicking into place with it. And I learned a lot about tequila production and what happens in the world of tequila based off of a lot of the stuff I've researched in winemaking. And the funny thing is, it's been collaborated. It's been agreed upon amongst some really great producers in the industry. So last episode, we talked about fermentables and how they're similar and how they use wine yeast and all kinds of things going into it. And then lately, we've been seeing kind of wine make its impact in the tequila industry, and we'll kind of go over that part right now. So wine's impact in the tequila industry has actually been kind of interesting lately, where, before when tequila was first being produced, they were doing a lot of aging in bourbon, previously used bourbon barrels and whiskey barrels and stuff like that to kind of draw the bourbon drinkers and stuff in. But recently, there has been some kind of experimentation in using wine barrels. And some of the results have been phenomenal because, since it's actually a fact that the fermentables and a lot of the elements in tequila must is the same as wine, that it makes sense that the flavors and stuff would accent each other too, right? So a long time ago, the Rosa Tequila line was kind of introduced into the tequila world. And one of the first really to kind of get recognition for it was Código 1530, which is George Strait's brand. But it wasn't really done very well. And the flavor profile on that tequila wasn't very good. They were just experimenting with red wine barrels. And the person doing it probably didn't have much experience in the wine world to know what they were doing and to know how to do things properly with it to really kind of generate a nice flavor profile. And next after that, there was another brand that came out called Calle Rosa, which is, I believe, now owned by Adam Levine from Maroon 5. But that brand also uses primarily red wine barrels from California, from Napa Valley, to age their tequilas in. And last time I tried it, it was okay. It wasn't great. And then the next kind of impact that wine had was actual winemaker, an actual wine guru that started incorporating wine barrels and making really good tequila. And that's a luchador, David Ravandi, who is a huge wine guy, actually lives in Sonoma County in wine country here in California, and is a big wine guy, created a brand called El Luchador. And a luchador is aged in white Burgundy barrels. And the flavor profile on it is beautiful. He picked the perfect kind of thing to blend in that would accent the wine, but also bring out some of the nice nuances from the barrel, and then also accent the agave. He loves agave, but he also loves wine, and so he wanted to bring the best of both worlds together with that brand El Luchador. And so when the El Luchador Repo first came out, that's when I kind of fell in love with the brand. Because the white Burgundy barrels that the tequila was aged in really provided a nice flavor profile. It didn't override the agave like we like. The agave's still there. But you can actually taste, the white Burgundy, the Chardonnay accents in it, the grapiness and stuff in it. But then you still get that beautiful vanilla and caramel and stuff coming from the barrel, since wine, it's a lower alcohol percentage, doesn't extract a lot of those compounds out of the barrel, not as much as like a higher proof spirit would. So tequila will draw more out, but also bring that wine grapiness to it. But it was one person in particular that really kind of blew up the use of wine barrels in tequila production. And he's a good friend of mine. You guys, if you've heard of him, his name is Jaime Villalobos Souza. And Jaime is a huge wine guy. He actually has backpacked through Italy, tasting different wines from different regions and the foods and stuff, and really kind of developing a flavor profile for Italy, which was really kind of cool. And then he also has been to Spain and did a wine tour through Spain, drinking wine and getting the flavors of Spain. And he's been through France. He's been through a lot of areas in the world in wine. And he's a huge, huge wine guy, to the point where when he's not producing tequila, he actually travels the world doing wine teaching. He teaches wine. He teaches wine to people, teaches them about different varietals, teaches them about winemaking processes and stuff. He knows a lot about wine production. And what's kind of cool is since I'm friends with him, I've been kind of sending him information on things that I'm doing here in my own winery. And he gets really excited about have you tried doing this? Are you doing this with this varietal? And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this. And he's like, oh, I'm so excited. And so it's like, we kind of go back and forth with each other about what I'm doing here in my home winery to learn more about tequila production. And then he would say, now you see how this relates to this and the flavor development for tequila? And I'm like, absolutely. Yeah, I see that. And so we've been having a great time exchanging stuff together. But it was him that really kind of brought and exploded the Rosa category in the tequila world with the brand that he did called Dos Angeles Caídos. And if you haven't tried the Rosa, it is absolutely amazing. And what he did is he didn't use like regular Napa Cabernet barrels. And instead, they sourced their barrels from the Valle de Guadalupe in Mexico. And they use Tempranillo barrels, which is different. Nobody was using Tempranillo barrels before. And when he created this Rosa, it, in my opinion, it was one of the best Rosas available on the market. And it actually, according to some of the brand owners that I talked to, it actually kind of sparked interest in them creating Rosas as well and trying to do theirs just as good. And one of those examples would be John Bollinger with Yayo Tequila. When I was sitting with him, when I was in Mexico on my recent visit, we talked, and we had talked previously before when he did the Rosa Reposado, which is really good, really well done. He said he really wasn't too impressed with the whole Rosa category until he tried Dos Angeles Caídos. And he said, that one by far he believed was the best Rosa on the market. And I agree with him on that. The wine flavor influences on that tequila, along with the barrel presence and stuff, it's married perfectly. And so anybody that ever wondering, well, does grapes, and wine and tequila go together? It actually does quite well. But you don't see a lot. You don't see a lot of cocktail recipes, including these two alcohols together. You don't see a lot of stuff where people talk about that. So it's we're tapping into something new here and kind of exciting. So I hope you're getting excited about it too and want to try some of the stuff that I've been doing to learn more about tequila production, but also to experience kind of a interesting and wonderful world of flavors, to put it bluntly. So Yayo got, influenced by Dos Angeles Caídos, and when he created his Rosa Reposado, he wanted to create something along the lines of the Dos Angeles Caídos at the same caliber, at the same level. And I think he did that with the Rosa Reposado. It's really good. So we're seeing more Rosas coming out. Cascadas has come out with a Rosa. There's a bunch of other brands that have introduced Rosas. And another really good example of a really good kind of Rosa was the Carrera Dos Madeiras, which came out, which was only rested in Napa Cabernet barrels. But the wine presence is definitely there, and it just explodes with these amazing flavors. That single barrel that we did for the Tequila Barrel and Agave Collective blew up. It sold out really quick. And people to this day are still asking, are you guys going to do some more Dos Madeiras with the Carrera? Are you going to do anything more along those lines? And originally there was no plans on doing that. But in my most recent visit, I said to the Camarenas, I said, look, let's do another project, but I want wine barrels. So find some Napa Cabernet barrels and let's fill them up and let's try to create something really special using wine barrels. So I just got a notice last week that the Camarenas did find some wine barrels and they filled them up with some of the still strength Blanco from Carrera, and we're going to work together on putting together something really nice using wine barrels. So there it goes. There's more of an impact that wine is having in the tequila world. A lot of people, it's not really dawning on them what's happening unless you really pay attention and kind of look at what's going on. For me, it's kind of an interesting trend. And for people that are wine drinkers, it gives you a reason to kind of look into tequila again, explore it and look for things. And, don't think about the whole experience you had getting, hungover and sick on Jose Cuervo Gold. Tequila these days is a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing than the party drink we grew up with. It's really the good, ultra fine tequilas are now in the United States available here where they weren't before. And some of the newer distilleries now that are being built are incorporating some of the technology that winemakers have learned and are incorporating that into producing better quality tequilas that, won't get you hungover, will have amazing flavors that you can, experiment with the whole terroir aspect of it. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of really cool things you can do. And of course, I'm always here for you guys along the way to help guide you and point you towards things to try, things to experiment with, and help you on your journey so you have a great experience and learn to love this spirit as much as I. So after seeing the tequila's wine's influence and impact in the tequila world, and after learning all this stuff about the similarities before them, I said, okay, I'm a kind of person, and I'm sure these guys that are like, I want to learn all there is to learn. I want to explore. I want to experiment. I want to make some mistakes. I want to be able to learn. So when I go to tequila, I don't want to be a tourist. When I go to visit Mexico and visit the producers, I don't want to be one of those guys that just goes there and is like, I'm going to get drunk. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to, learn about all the marketing stuff from the brands and from the producers and believe everything they tell me. Instead, I'm like, well, I want to go and I want to learn enough that I can actually help. I want to help producers. I want to come up with ideas of different things to do with them to help expand their brands, to help introduce more people to their brands, introduce more people to tequila. So I said, okay, well, what can I do to do this? What can I do to learn more? And I said, well, the only thing I can do here in the United States, since home distillation is illegal, we can't grow Weber Blue Agave to the extent they can in Mexico. I said, the only thing I could really do, I think, is get into making wine at home to learn more about the processes going up to distillation, in the world of tequila. So I started making wine here at home, and I started just like everybody else does, with using what they call kits. There's wine kits, because home winemaking here in California, United States, is legal. You can make wine up to 100 gallons per person over the legal drinking age in the United States. And up to 200 gallons total. So if you're married, you can make up to 200 gallons of wine a year and not be a licensed winery, because they assume that that's about the most you can consume as an individual, where drinking 200 gallons of wine within a year, it's a lot of wine. So I end up giving a whole lot of my wine away to friends so they can enjoy it. And then I also share it when people come here, we'll enjoy wine. So I got in, and the first thing I did was started making kits. And I'll do a video on the Hombre Cave YouTube channel where I'll make wine from a kit, because I still have some kits left over. But I started making it from kits, and it's not that hard to do. But you need to pay attention and you need to focus on certain things. And I'll go over a lot of that stuff too. But I started with kits, and I made some really nice wine with the kits. And, I had some experience in the fermentation side from the home brewing experience that I had, where I knew there were certain things I needed to do, but I also had to do some research. And there's a really good book from a guy named Daniel Pambiacci, I believe is the way you pronounce his last name. It's I believe it's called The Art of Home Winemaking. And it's a really good book that gives you a lot of detailed information and goes into the chemistry, in wine as well, and gets really detailed. And so, of course, I was equipped with that book, and I said, okay, I'm going to start with these kits, and we'll start making wine. And so I started making wine from kits, and then it wasn't as detailed as I wanted it to be because, you know, they don't make tequila from kits, right? So to understand, when you buy a kit, it's like if I was to go and buy a pre-made mosto from a distillery in Mexico of tequila mosto, where they've already cooked the agave, they've already extracted the sugars from it, and they packaged it in a bag and made it so it's shelf stable, so it doesn't need to be refrigerated, so it's not gonna ferment. They put it in a box, they throw some yeast in there, and they give you all the other stuff you need to make sure that the wine's clear and everything like that. And they provide you the whole box, and then it's up to you to ferment it and stuff. That's basically what these kits are. The whole thing of picking the grapes, crushing them, and extracting the juices and stuff is already done for you. So that's the way I started, because it was the easiest way to start. I didn't need much equipment and didn't need, you know, much investment and stuff to start working with it. But then, you know, it allowed me to learn more about fermentation, things I need to do to protect the wine, to keep it from getting infected. Because, you know, you'll see all of a sudden you'll see white stuff growing on the top of your 6-gallon carboy or bucket that you're fermenting the wine in, and you're like, what's going on here? And so then, you know, you join Facebook groups, home winemaking Facebook groups, and you can post a picture and say, hey, what's going on with this? And they go, oh, that's a lactobacillus infection. Congratulations. You need to sanitize your thing better or keep air out. And they tell you how to fix it, but you can also look it up in the home winemaking book. And so I started learning it, but when I'm looking at some of the stuff in the wine that I'm making, I'm going, okay, there's a white film on top of this. Is that supposed to be there? And then I remember when I'm at the distillery, I've seen that white film on top of the fermenters at the distillery. So I'm like, oh, what is this? And so I would post it up in the home winemaking group, and one of the more experienced winemakers in the group would say, oh, that's a lactobacillus infection. You need to get that wine out of there before it starts adding all kinds of off flavors to it. You need to do a better job with headspace management and keeping air out of your fermenter. And you need to, keep it closed or whatever after the primary fermentation is mostly done. And they give you things to do to keep that from happening. And so I started learning when I started seeing things happening in the wine. I'm like, I remember seeing that in the fermenters at this distillery when I was there. I remember seeing this. I remember seeing this. And so things started clicking where I'm seeing some of the flaws that happen in tequila fermentation were happening in wine as well. And I was learning how to fix them. So I'm like, okay, well, if I learn how to fix them here, I could probably help with fixing them in the tequila distilleries with the producers, which is kind of cool, right? So then things started getting more interesting after I advanced to the point where kits were no longer a challenge for me. I said, okay, I live here in Southern California. There's grapes available all over the place. And because the wine industry in general is having some issues where sales have dropped, there's a large supply of grapes available. So I said, I'm going to start doing it from grapes. And so I would contact vineyards and say, okay, I'm looking to pick up some grapes. I don't need to buy it by the ton like most of the big wineries do. Instead, I just need like 200 to 400 pounds. And they're like, okay, yeah, you come pick them yourself. And so I started seeing more similarities when I'd go out to the vineyard, and I'm like, okay. And I talk to people and say, what do I want to look for when let's say I'm picking up a Cabernet Sauvignon grape. And I'm like, what do I look for in a good Cabernet Sauvignon grape to know that I'm getting a good quality grape when I'm harvesting from the vineyard? And they're like, you want to look for good clusters, you want to look for good color, and you want to check the bricks of those grapes, the bricks being the sugar content. So I bring a little device with me. There's two devices that I use. I use a manual one and I use an electric one, and they're called refractometers. So there's a manual refractometer where you squeeze the grape onto this plate on it, and then you hold it up into the light, and it'll tell you the sugar content of the juice that's on the refractometer. They use the same exact thing when checking agave out in the fields, when checking the sugar content of the agave. So I check the sugar content and I'm like, okay. And they're saying, yeah, you want for like 14, you want to go to 14%. A nice wine, typically runs around 13, 14%. So you want to look around 24 bricks. And I'm like, 24 bricks? That sounds familiar. And so I'll message, somebody like Sergio Cruz or Mauricio Camarena or Carlos Camarena. I say, what do you look for when you go out to harvest agave? What bricks do you look for? And they go around 24. And I'm like, okay, all right. Yeah, there's similarities there. So I go to harvest to pick the grapes and then bring them back. And then I have to make sure that I crush them and destem them, pull the stems out just like they do, with agave, similar, where they chop the agave in half and then they take the cojollo out because the cojollo adds bitterness to it, just like the stems would. The stems also add potassium to the wine, which can affect your acidity level, which you don't want. So most of the time they'll pull the stems out. The old school ways, they stomp them with the stems. But the more modern ways, they try to take the stems out because they want to control the acid level of the grapes and make sure the acidity stays where it needs to be to protect the wine. So I do the whole crushing and destemming the grapes, and then I ferment it. And then I was using wine yeast, of course. And then I'm looking, okay, this is similar with tequila production. And they're like, you got to make sure when you are fermenting the grapes that you're watching the whole process and make sure once it starts settling down, you don't leave it too long. You want to transfer it into a carboy, a closed fermenter, and seal it up and let it finish. And then also have it go into malolactic fermentation. I went, malolactic that sounds familiar. I'm like, malolactic fermentation. So I'm like, what is malolactic? And they're like, well, that's when the malic acid is eaten by bacteria that you'll add, and that, or it's there naturally. You can try to let it happen naturally. It's better if you add the bacteria yourself. But if you let it happen naturally, it will, the bacteria will eat the malic acid and convert it into lactic acid, which gives you a more rounded flavor profile. It makes it more buttery, less acidic, less tart. Makes it a more balanced wine. And I'm like, okay. But I'm like, wait, they always talked about malolactic fermentation in tequila as well. And so I'm like, well, let me pull the phone out and Google, does agave mosto have malic acid in it? And bing, yes, it does. I'm like, oh, okay, there you go. So there's another similarity, malolactic fermentation. But I'm like, wait, but malolactic fermentation in tequila, they tell me, adds this cheesy funkiness to it. So I'm like, okay, well, if I get a cheesy funkiness in my wine, what causes it? And they're like, it's a lactobacillus infection. And I'm like, okay, that's those spider webby stuff I see on top of the fermenter in my winemaking. That's the same stuff I see when I'm at the distillery on top of the fermenters there. That's lactobacillus. That's not a malolactic fermentation. That's bacteria from the air getting into it and infecting the must. That's an off flavor. I'm like, makes sense. I thought the cheesy flavor note was kind of an interesting thing, a new thing, but it ends up, it's a flaw. And I'm like, wow, okay. So, and then when you try a tequila where they don't let that happen, where they cut the fermentation short and they get it over to do the distillate, you're like, okay, this is pure agave. This is what we did when I did the Carrera still strength Blanco with Carrera with the Mauricio Camarena. I'm like, this is more agave notes without that weird fermentation notes added to it. So I learned something else from making wine. And so now this is my second year making wine, and I'm learning more and more. And I'm going to be doing an enology class, certification program. It's actually more than just a class, a bunch of classes to get certified as a professional winemaker. So I'm going to take you guys along on that too. I'm going to talk about the stuff we're learning in my enology class too. So You too can learn more about making wine at home and also as well about fermenting tequila before it gets distilled. I do. So it's been an interesting journey. And the funny thing is, I talk about tequila and wine on my channel and online with, people that watch my content, and I get a lot of blowback from them. They're like, oh, hombre, you're just, trying to push wine stuff. No, you're wrong. It's not similar to wine. It's more similar to bourbon. And I'm like, no, it's not. Bourbon's grain-based. It's maltose. They're not the same fermentable. Oh, but then why would it's not distilled, though. Wine's not distilled, so it wouldn't be similar to wine. I go, no, it's very similar to wine. But I guess you could say if you're looking at the distillation aspect, it'd be more similar to brandy. Well, why aren't you talking about brandy, though? Because I don't know the rules of brandy with, what they do and how they do things there. I know that I've never tried a white brandy before. I don't know if they make a white brandy, but it's more in line with wine because wine's like basically the heart of tequila. That's basically what you distill is basically a wine. So, and that makes sense now why they called it vino de mezcal, right? A wine of the mezcal. And it's just distilled. So if tequila wasn't called tequila, they didn't trademark the name and set up the designation of origin on it, would it be called a brandy? Well, if you looked at the chemical makeup of it, looking at the fructose, the sugar being a fruit-based sugar, it could be. But because the agave is not really considered a fruit, I don't know. I don't know if people would consider it a brandy or not. But it would be kind of an interesting thing to explore, and that it's more in line, more similar to brandy than it would be any other spirit out there. There is grappa, which grappa is kind of an interesting spirit in itself, in that it's they take the used grapes from wine, and then they ferment it again, and then they distill that. So that's a whole different thing as well. But I don't think it would be any more similar than brandy is. To what tequila is today. So tequila would be more like a brandy. So if you're a brandy drinker, you want to look at tequila as well, because the similarities there are really crazy close. Well, there you go. I not only talked about the similarities between wine and tequila, but then also wine's impact in the world of tequila. And now we're going to wind things down. Wind, not wine things. We're going to wind things down now, and we'll start getting more into winemaking stuff. So for those of you that are tequila people like myself that want to start making wine at home, I'm going to teach you how to do it. We'll talk about wine stuff here as well as tequila stuff, and we'll keep things, combined. So if you're a tequila person, like, I don't want to learn about wine, don't worry. We'll still talk about some really cool tequila stuff. I'll have some tequila producers on here where we'll talk about both wine and tequila together. I love both now. I'm a huge wine drinker. I host a once a month wine dinner now, where I wasn't a wine drinker before I got into tequila. But if you have any questions about winemaking and tequila and wine and comparisons and stuff, please drop me a comment any place you find your podcasts, or you can just message me, DM directly on Instagram at the Tequila Hombre on Instagram, or drop a comment on this video on YouTube, and I'll respond personally and answer your questions for you. I'm here to help. And like I always say, until next time, life is too short to drink bad tequila or wine. So keep watching. Check out the Tequila Hombre channel as well, and you'll be experiencing some great tequila as well as some great wine, and learning about the similarities between the two. All right, salud.